Hey, here's part two of our trip to France, or as you might call it, part deux. And so, first of all, I want to get into the Romantic era in France. Now, at the end of the French Revolution, there was some peace, sort of. I mean, Napoleon came in too, but we'll want to talk about that. There was a new breath of life into music and art in France at that time. And so we get a lot of composers in the Romantic period. Now, two composers I want to highlight today. First of all, Hector Berlioz, great French composer, very programmatic, very romantic in how he would approach music. And I've included the overture to the Roman Carnival overture of his. It's one of the greatest. It's an exciting piece, easy, I think, for kids to listen to. It's very programmatic. And the other thing about this is one part of the romantic thing. It's an overture to nothing because it's just all by itself. You know, usually an overture is like the beginning. It's the introduction part to an opera or a play. It doesn't go to anything. It's just an overture for the sake of having an overture. Kind of interesting, huh? Another great romantic composer was Georges Bizet, and he's most known for his opera Carmen. The opera still gets performed a lot, but the music from the opera gets played even more in concert nowadays. So I've included Carmen Fantasy. Same melodies and everything like that. It's for a solo violinist and in an orchestra. Ironically, even though it's Georges Bizet's music, it was actually composed by a Spanish composer named Sarasate. We won't go into that right now. We'll get to Spain later. Now, after the Romantic era, there kind of came a period where some new things were happening in the art world in France, and so the composers, the musicians wanted to reflect what was happening in the painting world. And so with painting, you got painters like Van Gogh and Monet who made Impressionist works. And so it was not an idea of structure and getting just your lines just right. It was a matter of getting an impression of the scene and evoking strong feelings and emotions with the piece of art, that is. And so same thing happened with the music. They wanted to get away from the structure and form that existed in music and really focus on the tone and the color and the atmosphere that a piece of music could have. And so two big composers came out of this. So Claude Debussy and Maurice Ravel. Now, Claude Debussy came a little bit earlier than Ravel, and in the playlist I include one of his quintessential pieces, Clair de Lune. It's a wonderful piano piece that pretty much every piano player, if you play through high school and lessons, you'll learn this piece. It's difficult, but not too difficult, and it's beautiful nonetheless. And Ravel, I actually include part of his Mother Goose Suite, which is for kids, and I include the part from which is titled Beauty and the Beast. And so that's a fun one to listen to get a take on the Beauty and the Beast story before Walt Disney retold it, you know. And we have such a big shadow from Walt Disney with a lot of these stories, but these stories existed long before. Lastly, I want to get to the modern era. Now, in the 20th century, this is in the 1900s, World War I and World War II really took a devastating toll on the art scene in France, and it really didn't catch up until maybe the 1960s or maybe 50s even. But there's still a couple of really great composers that came out of this time. So the first one that I want to highlight is Darius Milhaud. He was a really interesting composer. He did a lot of really innovative things. A lot of people in the world followed what he was doing and emulated what he was doing. He preferred small ensembles, and usually his small ensembles were kind of weird combinations of instruments like flute, clarinet, oboe, and piano. And so because of those weird combinations, you get some really different tone colors that happen with it because of the combination of the instruments. Now, lastly, my last composer that I want to highlight is Francis Poulenc. And he came a little bit after Milhaud. He had to return to some larger forms. You know, he would do some orchestra works, choir pieces. I think he even composed an opera. Again, a great composer. He did really innovative stuff. He also embraced tonality, but in a completely new way than some of the Germans who completely rejected it, like Schoenberg did. Anyways, I include in the playlist his Sonata for Clarinet and Piano. This is probably one of his greatest works, and it's one of the most frequently heard of his works as well. I know the clarinet players that I know love this one. I love it too. It's actually one of my favorites of his. So make sure you go to my website to learn more about this time period in France and see the playlist and listen to it with your kids. Help them engage in this music because, again, listening to this is so good for them. and I just want to keep encouraging you to go. Also, let me know the reactions. Sometimes they're going to like the music, sometimes not. Let me know what they like and dislike. I would love to hear those comments. So post down below and give me a thumbs up, and I will hopefully start to get some good feedback here, and so that way we can continue and I can kind of really fine tune it for what your kids and your family needs. All right, I'll see you next week. Bye bye.